My mother
Simone,
never once
please
held
just
me while
listen
I
to me.
cried.
I
I
know you're
promised
hurt,
myself my
but I
child
can
would be
explain why I
different.
kept these
I said
letters
it
in the
out loud
tin.
alone in a hospital bathroom the night my daughter was born, with my hand pressed flat against the mirror. You will be held. You will be soft. You will never wonder if you're loved. Then last Tuesday, in my daughter's kitchen down in Atlanta, I watched my 6-year-old granddaughter pick her doll up off the floor, pat its little head, and say in a voice that wasn't hers, in a voice I have heard my entire life, "Hush now. Crying never fixed a thing." I had to grab the edge of the counter, because I didn't teach her that. My daughter didn't teach her that, not on purpose. That sentence is older than all of us. That sentence walked up out of Mississippi in 1955 in the mouth of a 17-year-old girl, and it has been handed down ever since, mother to daughter, like a piece of jewelry nobody wanted, but nobody knew how to throw away. And standing in that kitchen, I understood something that knocked the wind out of me clean. I didn't just hurt my daughter. I taught her how to hurt hers. If you have ever heard your own mother's voice come out of your mouth and flinch, type one word in the comments. Just one. I read every single one. Now sit with me a while, because this is the story of how a wound finds its way down 4 generations of women, and how after 80 years, one of us finally laid it down. My name is Loretta Mae Coleman. I'm 64 years old. I taught 3rd grade on the south side of Chicago for 38 years. And in all that time, I believed I would have sworn on the Bible that I was a better mother than the one who raised me. I need to tell you about 3 women before I can tell you about me. Because none of this started with me. And it doesn't end with me either. That's the whole point. My mother's name was Eula Mae Coleman, and she was born in 1938 in Money, Mississippi, a town so small that today most people only know its name because of the terrible thing that happened there to a boy named Emmett. My mother grew up in that air, that fear stitched into the everyday. She told me exactly one story from her childhood one time, and never again. She was 9 years old. Her daddy took her into the dry goods store in town, and a white man behind the counter shorted him on his change, counted it out wrong on purpose, daring my grandfather to say something. And my grandfather stood there, a grown man, and said, "Yes, sir, thank you, sir," and walked out with less than he was owed and his head down. And little Eula's face, 9 years old, started to crumple, started to show what she felt. And her mother, my grandmother, grabbed her by the wrist so hard it left marks, leaned down and hissed, "Don't you let your face show a single thing. Not here. Showing gets you killed." That was the lesson. That was the first stone dropped in the water, and the ripples are still moving. Showing what you feel is dangerous. Softness is a luxury for people who are safe. And we were never, ever safe. She came north in 1955. 17 years old, 1 cardboard suitcase, a train ticket, and that lesson packed in tighter than anything she was wearing. Chicago. She cleaned rooms at the Palmer House Hotel downtown. Beautiful place, gold ceilings, and my mother on her knees scrubbing other people's bathtubs. Later she got factory work. She married my father, and she had me in 1961. And she raised me the only way she knew how. And I want you to hear me clearly, because this is where most people get it wrong. My mother was not cruel. My mother was not cold because she didn't love me. My mother loved me the only way the world had ever let her love anything, by keeping it alive. Love to Eula Coleman was 3 meals on the table. Clean clothes pressed at 5 in the morning before her shift. A roof. Report cards with A's on them. Love was, "I will keep you breathing in a country that wants you gone." That was the biggest, fiercest thing she had, and she poured it out every single day. She just never once said the words. And she never once held me. I remember being 7, 8 years old taking piano lessons. Now we did not have money for piano lessons. We did not have money for much. But my mother found $4 a week, $4 in 1960-something, and I found out years later she found it by skipping her own lunch. She went hungry so I could learn Chopin in a church basement. And I won a little recital ribbon once. First place. I ran home just flying, holding that ribbon up like the sun. And my mother looked at it and looked at me, and she nodded one time and said, "Good. Now stand up straighter next time. You were slouching." That was it. That was the whole thing. She'd skipped lunch for months to put me in front of that piano, and she could not. Her body would not let her give me one clean sentence of joy without a correction stapled to the back of it. Good now. There was always a now. The love was real. The love was enormous. But it never ever arrived by itself. I'll tell you when I finally saw it. The love I mean saw it plain years later, long after she was gone. When I was a girl, my mother got up at 4:30 every single morning. Factory shift started at 6, and she had a long bus ride. But before she left in the dark in that cold little kitchen, she ironed. She ironed my school dress and my father's work shirt every morning fresh, even though she'd ironed them the night before because she said wrinkles set overnight, and she would not send her child out into the world looking like nobody cared for her. I'd lie in my bed half asleep and hear that iron going, that little hiss of steam, the soft thump of it against the board at 5 o'clock in the morning. In the dark, a tired woman pressing love into cotton because she had no other language for it. I thought that was just chores. I thought that's what mothers did. It took me 50 years to understand that the ironing was the "I love you." She was saying it. Every morning. In the only words she had. And I slept right through it because I was waiting to hear it out loud, and it never came out loud, and I held that against her for most of my life. That's the thing nobody tells you about this kind of wound. The love is there. It's pouring out everywhere. You just can't recognize it because it never once looks like being held. There was a tin box she kept, an old blue cookie tin dented on one corner. She kept it on the top shelf of her closet, and she kept it locked. And when I was a child and asked what was in it, she told me to mind my business and went quiet for the rest of the night. So I learned not to ask. I forgot about it for 40 years. Hold on to that box. We'll come back to it. My mother died in 1998. 60 years old younger than I am now. I just realized that as I'm telling you this. And at her funeral, I did not cry. I sat in that front pew in my good black dress, and I held my face perfectly still, the way she taught me, the way her mother taught her in a store in Money, Mississippi. And I was proud of myself for it. I thought it was strength. It took me 27 more years to understand that it wasn't strength. It was the wound, closed over, healed wrong, hard as a knuckle. That's me. And here is the cruel, funny, terrible truth of it. I knew. I knew what my mother had done to me. I felt every cold inch of it growing up. And I swore the way only a hurt child can swear that I would do it differently. And in some ways I did. I said the words, "I love you." I said it to my daughter Simone every night of her childhood. I tucked her in. I read to her. I told her I loved her until the words were as ordinary as breathing in our house. And I was so proud of that because my mother never gave me those words, and I gave them away by the fistful. So I thought I was free. I thought I'd broken it. I didn't break it. I just changed its outfit. Because here's what I didn't see. I gave Simone the words my mother never gave me, but I gave them the exact same way my mother gave me that ribbon nod. With a now attached, with a price. You did good on the test, baby. Now we need to talk about that 1B. That's a beautiful drawing. Now imagine if you really practiced. I'm proud of you. Now don't let it go to your head. Always the now. Always the next thing she had to do, the next way she had to be before she could rest in being loved. I never once, and I have searched my whole memory. I promise you I have searched it. I never once told that child I was happy she existed full stop with nothing after it. The love was always a door she had to keep earning her way through. Same door my mother built. I just painted it a brighter color and told myself it was new. When Simone got into Spelman College in 2007, Spelman, one of the finest schools in this country, my baby, a Coleman woman going to college. You know what I said? I should have grabbed her and screamed for joy. You know what came out of my mouth? That's good. Don't go down there and get lost around all those rich kids. I said it before I could stop it. Praise then warning. The exact rhythm. Good, but watch yourself. I heard my mother in my own voice, and I didn't even notice, because by then her voice and my voice had grown together like two trees planted too close. I was a wonderful teacher, by the way. 38 years. There are grown men and women all over this city who still hug me at the grocery store, who tell me I was the one who believed in them. I could give other people's children the soft, easy, unconditional warmth I could not figure out how to give my own. That's a particular kind of heartbreak. To be a fountain for the world in a locked tin box for your own daughter. Simone is 37 now. She's an architect, designs buildings, real ones, with her name on them. She lives in Atlanta with her wife Denise, who teaches yoga and laughs with her whole body, and their little girl, Naomi. Atlanta is 800 miles from Chicago. I used to think she moved that far for the work. She is the most accomplished person I know, and she holds me at exactly arm's length, and has for years, and for the longest time I could not understand it. She calls on the right days. Mother's Day, my birthday, Christmas. The calls are warm enough and short. Too short. She never tells me anything real. I'd ask how she was doing, and she'd say, "Good, busy, you know how it is." And I'd feel the door close, polite and firm, and I never understood why a daughter I gave so many words to would give me back so few. What got passed down to her, what none of us ever wanted to pass down, was this. My daughter does not let herself be soft. She is brilliant, and she is guarded, and she does not show joy easily because in her body somewhere, she can't even reach joy has always been the thing that gets corrected. Good now, so she learned to keep her good things to herself where no now could reach them, including me. Especially me. I didn't understand any of that last Tuesday. Last Tuesday I just thought I had a daughter who didn't call enough. But oh, that grandbaby. Naomi. Let me tell you about Naomi because I need you to love her the way I love her before I tell you the rest. She is 6 years old and she is pure light. She is the kind of child who names the spiders in the backyard instead of being scared of them. There's one she calls Mr. Buttons that she checks on every morning. When I came to visit, she'd made me a welcome book, 7 pages of crayon, and on the last page she'd drawn the two of us as stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun the size of the whole sky. And she'd written Grandma and me in those big wobbly letters where the S is always backwards. She climbed up in my lap that first night and put her whole self against my chest. No hesitation, no earning it. Just here I am, I belong to you. And she fell asleep there like it was the easiest thing in the world. I sat in that chair and held her, and I thought, Lord, this child knows how to be loved. She just lets it in. Where did she learn that? Not from us. I didn't know yet that she was already learning the other thing, too. The old thing. That both lessons were going in at the same time, side by side, and that I was about to watch it happen with my own eyes. And then I went down to Atlanta for a visit, and I was standing in their kitchen drying a glass, and Naomi came tearing through the back door, having tripped on the patio step knee, scraped tears coming. And before I could move, before I could even set the glass down and open my arms, I heard my daughter's voice from across the room. Sharp, automatic, a reflex older than she is. Naomi, hush. Crying never fixed a thing. The exact words. The exact words my mother said to me. The words her mother said to her in 1947 in a store in Mississippi with her wrist held too tight. And my granddaughter, 6 years old, stopped crying. Just like that. Pressed her own tears back with the heel of her hand the way you'd press a lid onto a jar. And then she turned around and she picked up her doll off the floor and she patted its head and she told that doll the same thing. Hush now. Crying never fixed a thing. 4 generations. I stood in that kitchen with a dish towel in my hand, and I watched the wound jump from my daughter's mouth into my grandbaby's hands, smooth and easy like it had always lived there, like it would live there forever. Like one day Naomi would say it to a child of her own and never know where it came from. And here is what undid me. It wasn't Simone's voice being sharp. It was how fast it happened, how natural. Simone didn't think about it. She didn't choose it. It came out of her the way blinking comes out of you, a reflex worn so deep into the body that the body does it for you. I know that reflex. I have that exact reflex. My mother had it. Her mother had it in a store in Mississippi in 1947. We have been doing this so long it has stopped being a choice and started being a nervous system. It has become the way Coleman women are built. And little Naomi soaking it up, patting that doll, passing it on already at 6, she wasn't being cruel either. She was doing what children do. She was learning how love sounds in her family. She was memorizing the music. Hush, crying never fixed a thing. That's the lullaby we've been singing each other for 80 years, and not one of us ever meant a word of harm by it. My mother has been dead for 27 years, and she was right there in that kitchen, alive, in the mouth of a 6-year-old. That was the moment I understood that I had not broken anything at all. I had only carried it, carefully, lovingly, the whole way down. And I knew, standing there, dish towel in my hand, that if somebody didn't stop it, if I didn't stop it, it would not stop on its own. It would just keep going, down and down, forever. I was 64 years old, and for the first time in my life, I understood that the most important thing I would ever do, I had not done yet. I flew home to Chicago 2 days after that kitchen, and I could not sleep. I'd lie there in the dark and hear it on a loop. Hush, crying never fixed a thing. My mother's voice, my daughter's voice, my grandbaby's little voice, all three braided into one until I couldn't tell them apart. And somewhere in those long nights, 64 years old, staring at my ceiling, I finally started asking the question I had spent my whole life too proud and too scared to ask. What did I actually do to that child? Not the obvious things. I never hit Simone. I never screamed at her, never called her names, never went a day without feeding her or telling her I loved her. If you'd asked me a month ago, I would have told you I was a good mother, and I would have meant it with my whole chest. There was no villain in our house. No black eye, no empty refrigerator, nothing you could point to. That's what makes this kind of wound so hard to see. It doesn't leave a mark. It's not made of anything you can name in a courtroom. It's made of a pattern, quiet, daily, almost invisible. And the pattern was this. In our house, love came with a bill attached. You did good, now do better. I'm proud of you. Now don't slip. That's beautiful, baby, now. Imagine if you really tried. Every warm thing I handed my daughter, I handed her with a string on it, and the string pulled her toward the next thing she had to be before she could be loved again. She grew up believing, because I taught her gently, lovingly every single day, that she was a project that was never quite finished. That rest was something you earned and then immediately lost. And the comparisons. Lord, the comparisons. Look how nice your cousin keeps her room. Your friend Tasha made honor roll, did you know that? When I was your age, I was already working. I thought I was motivating her. I was teaching her that she was always behind somebody, that the race never ended and she was never winning it. I didn't invent any of that. I inherited it. And I handed it down without ever once unwrapping it to see what was inside. It was Denise who finally said it to my face. My daughter's wife. The yoga teacher who laughs with her whole body. I'd always liked Denise, but I'll be honest, I never quite understood what a soft, open woman like that saw in my guarded, locked-up girl. Now I think Denise saw the lock and decided to spend her life being gentle with it. That's its own kind of love. It was that same visit in Atlanta the night before I flew home. Simone had taken Naomi up for her bath, and it was just me and Denise in the kitchen drying dishes. And Denise, in that easy voice of hers, not angry, not accusing, just true, said, "Can I tell you something, Miss Loretta? And you're not gonna like it." I said, "All right." She said, "Simone rehearses your phone calls before she calls you. She writes down what she's going to say and she practices it so she doesn't give you anything you can correct." She kept drawing that same plate round and round. She's 37 years old and she still gets a stomach ache before she dials her own mother. Because somewhere in there, she's still that little girl waiting to find out if today she's good enough. I stood there with a wet glass in my hand and I could not say one word. "I'm not telling you to hurt you," Denise said. "I'm telling you because she'll never tell you herself. And somebody in this family ought to." That was the night the floor dropped out from under everything I believed about myself. After that, the memories started coming back different. Same memories. New eyes. Simone's 16th birthday. I threw her a beautiful party. I mean beautiful. I cooked for 2 days, the whole house full of her friends. Balloons, a cake I decorated myself. And I have always remembered that night as one of my proudest moments as a mother. But now I made myself remember the whole night. And what I'd buried was this: I spent most of that party with a camera, and every single picture I took, I made her redo. "Stand up straight, Simone. Don't make that face. Fix your collar. You're slouching, you always slouch." On her birthday, in front of her friends, I turned her own party into a performance review and never even knew I'd done it. She told me years later offhand that she remembered her 16th birthday as stressful. I was hurt when she said it. I thought she was being ungrateful. Stressful. I'd worked myself to the bone and she said stressful. She wasn't being ungrateful. She was telling me the truth, and I wasn't ready to hear it. And then there was my mother's funeral, 1998. I keep coming back to it because it's the same wound looked at from the other side. I sat in that pew, and I did not cry, and I was proud. And now, only now, do I understand that the thing I was proud of was the wound itself. I had been so well trained to lock my face that I couldn't even grieve my own mother out loud. I called that strength for 27 years. It wasn't strength, it was the inheritance. Working perfectly, right on schedule. And then the box came back. I want you to understand I had forgotten that box completely. Decades. But 2 weeks after Atlanta, right in the middle of all this, I got a call from Pastor Greer at my mother's old church, Greater Faith, down on the south side. New pastor, young man, been there a few years. He said they were finally clearing out the old fellowship hall storage room, 40 years of forgotten things, and they'd found a box with my mother's name on it. And a tag. With my name on it, too. I drove down there not knowing what to expect. And Pastor Greer handed me a dented blue cookie tin. The one from the top shelf of her closet. The one she'd locked, the one she told me to mind my business about. I hadn't seen it since I cleared out her apartment after she died, and I'd assumed it got lost in the shuffle of all that grief. It hadn't. Pastor Greer told me what he'd pieced together from the old church records. My mother in her last months. She knew she was dying. The cancer was fast had brought that tin to the pastor they had back then, Reverend Hollis, and she'd asked him to give it to me, after she was gone. When the time was right, the note said, but Reverend Hollis passed himself less than a year later, and in the confusion, his things and the church's things all got boxed up together and shoved in that storage room, and my mother's last message to me sat in the dark for 27 years. I took that tin home and I sat at my kitchen table for an hour before I could open it. Inside were letters. A stack of them, maybe 20 folded and worn, each one dated. And they were all addressed to me, to my Loretta. One for almost every year of my life, it turned out written on my birthday every November and never sent. Never given. Just written and folded and dropped in a cookie tin and locked away where no one would ever see them, including me. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely unfold the first one. The handwriting was hers, that careful old-fashioned cursive pressed hard into the paper. And this is what my cold, hard, never said I love you mother wrote on my birthday when I was a grown woman who thought she'd never loved me at all. My Loretta, you are 30 today. I watched you with your own little girl this Sunday and my heart like to burst right open. I have loved you since before you were born so much it scares me. I want to tell you. I open my mouth to tell you, and my own mama's hand comes up over it like she's still here. She taught me that loving out loud gets the thing you love taken away. I know that's not true up here in Chicago. I know it. But knowing and doing are two different countries, and I have never learned to cross over. So I write it here where it's safe, and I pray one day you'll know. I love you, baby. I have always loved you. I just never learned the road that gets it from my heart to my mouth. Forgive me, your mama. I put my head down on my kitchen table and I cried in a way I have not cried since I was a child. 27 years of it, maybe 60. I read them all that night, every one, and they broke me open in 100 different places. There was one from the year I turned 17, the year we fought the worst, the year I told her she was the coldest woman I'd ever known, and slammed my door so hard a picture fell off the wall. I remembered that fight my whole life as proof of how little she felt. And here is what she wrote that same week in the tin. My Loretta is 17 and she hates me tonight. She said I'm cold. She doesn't know I went in the bathroom after and put a towel in my mouth so she wouldn't hear me. She is so smart and so pretty and so much braver with her feelings than I ever was, and I am so proud of her I could shout it from the roof. But when she's standing in front of me, the words just die. Every time. I send her out into the world looking perfect and starched, and I cannot hand her the one thing she's actually asking me for. What kind of mother is that? Lord, help me be brave enough one day. Before it's too late. Before it's too late. She wrote that when I was 17. She died when I was 37, the same age Simone is right now. It was always too late for her. The bravery never came. The road never opened. And I sat there and understood that she hadn't been cold at all. She had been standing on the far side of a river her whole life, watching me, loving me, unable to cross. And I'd spent 50 years thinking the river was proof she didn't care. Because all my life I had carried one story. My mother was cold. My mother couldn't love me. And it was a lie. It was never true. She loved me so much it terrified her. And the very same wound that stole the words from her mouth was the wound she'd caught from her mother in a store in Mississippi with a hand clamped over a little girl's crying face. She wasn't the source of it. She was a victim of it. She knew. She knew she was failing me, and it broke her heart every single year, and she never found the road across. And I was about to do the exact same thing to my daughter. I was about to let her go to her grave thinking I never loved her, when the truth was I loved her so much I corrected her into a stranger. I should have sat with all of it longer. I should have let it teach me before I opened my mouth. But I was raw, and I was 64, and I did the thing this family always does. I rushed to fix it the wrong way. I called Simone that same night. I was crying. I told her about the box, about the letters, about her grandmother. And it was good for a minute, it was real. And then I felt the conversation tipping toward me, toward my pain, and the old reflex took the wheel before I even knew it was driving. I just need you to understand. I said that I did the best I could with what I had, Simone. You don't know how hard it was. You had everything. You had a mother who said she loved you every single night. That's more than I ever got. I worked myself half to death for you, and Mama? Stop. Her voice cut clean through mine. Quiet. Shaking. You're doing it right now. Doing what? You called to talk about Grandma, and somehow in 90 seconds it's about how hard you had it, how much you sacrificed. It's always... She stopped, took a breath. And then my daughter said the truest thing anyone has ever said to me. I didn't need you to work hard, Mama. I needed you to be proud of me. Just once. Without a but after it. Without a now after it. You were never just... Her voice cracked all the way open. You were never just glad I was here. Not once. Do you know what that does to a kid? To never once feel like your mother was just happy you exist. And here is my shame. Here is the moment I'd give anything to take back. Instead of saying you're right, instead of just listening the way those letters had begged me to learn, I got defensive. That is not fair, I said. That is not fair, Simone. After everything The line went quiet. Yeah, she said finally. Soft. Done. That's what I thought. And she hung up. I sat there in the dark, holding a dead phone in one hand and my mother's letters in the other, the letters that had waited 27 years in the dark to reach me. The mother who couldn't reach me, reaching out too late from a cookie tin, and me holding proof of exactly how this wound destroys a family. And I had just done the same thing to my own child not 5 minutes after reading it. I had become her, completely. The very thing I swore on a bathroom mirror I would never be. That was the lowest night of my life. After that phone call, my daughter disappeared. Not all at once. It's never all at once. It's quieter than that and crueler. The Sunday calls just stopped landing. I'd call and get her voicemail, and a text would come an hour later. Busy day talk soon, that warm, polite, locked door I knew so well, except now I understood I was the one who taught her to build it. The FaceTimes with Naomi got shorter. Used to be that baby would talk my ear off for half an hour. Mr. Buttons the spider what she ate a song she made up. Now it was 5 minutes, and Denise was always just off screen, and then, okay, baby, say bye to Grandma. It's bath time. And the screen would go dark, and I'd sit there holding a black phone again in a quiet apartment again. I knew what was happening. That was the part that nearly killed me. There was a time before Atlanta, before the box, when my daughter pulling away would have confused me. I'd have called her ungrateful cold, just like her grandmother, and never once looked in the mirror. But I couldn't hide behind that anymore. I knew exactly what I'd done and exactly why she was running. I had front row seats to the consequences of my own life's work, and I couldn't look away from a single second of it. Mother's Day came that May. 38 years I taught other people's children. You'd think I'd have learned not to expect much. But I sat by that phone all day in my good dress with a pot of coffee I didn't drink waiting. At 8:47 that night, a text came in. Happy Mother's Day. 3 words. No call, no picture of Naomi. No little voice singing me that off-key song she makes up. Just 3 words, and I could feel the rehearsal in them, the carefulness my daughter giving me the smallest possible thing I couldn't find a way to correct. I texted back, "Thank you, baby, I love you," and I watched those 3 dots appear and disappear and appear and disappear. She typed something 3 times and erased it 3 times. Then nothing. And I understood that my own child was standing 800 miles away with her thumbs over a phone, unable to say I love you. Back to her mother, caught on the exact same riverbank where my mother stood her whole life, where her mother stood before her. The current just kept on running, right through all of us. My friend Yvonne came over. 40 years we've been friends since we were young teachers together, 2 scared girls with a class of 30 each. She sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd read those letters, and she let me cry. And then she said the thing only a 40-year friend can say. "Loretta, I have known you since Carter was president, and I have watched you do this to that girl her whole life." She put her hand over mine. I never said nothing because it wasn't ugly enough to say something about. That's the trap of it. It's never ugly enough. But baby, I watched you raise a brilliant child who never once believed she was enough for you. And I watched you not see it. So you finally see it. Good. Now the question is, what are you going to do, sit here feeling guilty, or go fix it? She won't even pick up the phone, Yvonne. Yvonne nodded slow. Then maybe stop trying to talk and start trying to listen. You ever think about that? In 64 years, you ever once just listened to that child without getting your defense ready? I didn't answer her, because I already knew the answer, and the answer was no. It was Denise who told me the truth. She called me on her own without Simone knowing. Took her about a week to work up to it, I think. I need you to hear something, Miss Loretta, and I need you to really hear it, not get hurt and shut down. Can you do that? I said I'd try. Simone's been in therapy 6 years. 6 years. You didn't know that, did you? I said I didn't. She doesn't keep you at a distance because she hates you. I need you to understand that, because I know that's the story you're telling yourself, and it's wrong. Denise took a breath. She keeps you at a distance because she is terrified of becoming you. She loves Naomi so much it scares her, same way those letters said it scared your mama. And she knows the second she gets stressed, the second she gets tired, your voice comes right up out of her. Hush. Good now. You're slouching. She hears it. And every time you and her get close, it stirs it all up. And she's scared she'll carry it home and put it on Naomi. I had to sit down on my kitchen floor. Right there. The distance isn't her running from you, Denise said gentler now. The distance is her standing between you and her daughter. She's not protecting herself, Miss Loretta. She's protecting Naomi from the thing she's scared she caught from you. And I want to tell you what that did to me, because I think some of you have a child who's pulled away, and you've spent years calling it cruelty, calling it abandonment, telling everybody at church how your own flesh and blood turned cold on you. Maybe some of them did. But maybe some of those children are doing what my Simone was doing. Maybe the distance isn't a wall they built to keep you out. Maybe it's a shield they're holding up to keep something from getting through them and onto the next little one. Maybe your child pulled away not because they love you too little, but because they're fighting like hell to break something you can't even see. To stop a loop you handed them without either of you knowing. That's not abandonment. That's the bravest kind of love there is. It just looks exactly like rejection from where you're standing. I sat with that for 2 days and barely ate, because it was almost worse than thinking she hated me. My daughter wasn't punishing me. My daughter was saving her own child from me and doing it alone in silence for 6 years, paying a stranger to help her hold a door shut that I had spent her whole childhood propping open. I thought about all the years I'd complained about her to Yvonne, to the women at church, telling anyone who'd listen that my daughter had gotten cold and distant, that she'd moved 800 miles away, and barely called that after everything I'd done. She'd turned her back on me. I'd made myself the wounded one, the abandoned mother. And the whole time my child was the one doing the hard, brave, lonely work fighting a war. I started in a country I couldn't see to protect a little girl I loved with all my heart. I had been telling the wrong story about my own life for 64 years. My mother wasn't cold. My daughter wasn't cruel. And I wasn't the good mother who got abandoned. We were 3 women, all loving as hard as we could, all wounded, in the exact same place, all reaching for each other, through a fog so thick none of us could see that the others were reaching back. The mother in me wanted to call and explain, to make it better, to say, but I never meant to, but I love you, but. My whole life, every warm thing came with a but. Even my apologies would have come with a but. And I finally understood that, but was the whole disease. The but is where the love leaks out. Then Denise told me the last thing, and this is the one that got me off the floor. There's something else you should know, she said, and her voice was careful. After that phone call, the one where she hung up on you, she paused. Simone wrote you a letter, a long one, telling you she was done. No more calls, no more visits, no more holidays, that she had to cut it off completely for her own sake and for Naomi's. Denise let that sit. It's in her desk drawer right now, finished, signed. She's had it for 3 weeks. I couldn't breathe. She hasn't sent it, Denise said. And you want to know why she hasn't sent it? Why? I whispered. Because every night Naomi asks her the same question at bedtime. When do I get to see Grandma again? Every single night. Denise's voice broke a little. That baby loves you, Miss Loretta. She doesn't know any of this grown folks' history. She just knows her grandma held her on her chest and she felt safe. And Simone cannot bring herself to send a letter that takes that away from her daughter. So it just sits there, in the drawer, finished, waiting. I had been standing at the edge of a cliff for 3 weeks and never knew it. One letter in a drawer away from losing my daughter and my grandbaby forever. And the only thing holding it back was a 6-year-old who still wanted me. 2 days later, a thick envelope came in the mail. Denise's handwriting. Inside was a child's drawing on a folded piece of construction paper. It was a grandmother and a little girl, stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun that took up the whole sky. Just like the welcome book. The exact same picture she'd drawn me the first night I came to visit before any of this. Except this time underneath in those big wobbly letters where the S always comes out backwards, she'd written 4 words. Grandma, I miss you. And a little note tucked behind it from Denise. She made me promise to mail this. I didn't tell Simone. She asks about you every night. Whatever you're going to do it soon. I held that drawing for a long time. And here is where for the first time in my whole life, I did not do the Coleman thing. I did not pick up the phone to explain. I did not get my defense ready. I did not rehearse the buts. Everything in my body, 64 years of training, screamed at me to call and fix it, and talk and justify, and make her understand how hard I'd tried. Instead, I sat down at my kitchen table, my mother's letters on one side, my granddaughter's drawing on the other 3 generations of women reaching for each other across all that silence, and I picked up a pen. And I decided that for once in the history of this family, a Coleman woman was going to reach out, not to be heard, but to listen. I wrote my daughter a letter by hand. It took me 4 days and most of a box of tissues, and I threw away more drafts than I kept, because every first try came out the same old way, explaining, justifying, defending. Each time I caught a but sneaking in, I tore the page up and started over. I was learning at 64 how to write a sentence that didn't protect me. I'd never done it before, not once in my life. Here is what I finally sent. I'm going to read it to you exactly, because if there's one person out there who needs the words and can't find them, maybe you can borrow mine. My Simone, I'm not going to tell you how hard I had it. I know I always do that. I'm not going to do it this time. I'm not writing to explain myself. I don't have a single thing to defend. I'm writing because I finally understand that in 37 years I have never once just listened to you. Really listened. Without getting my answer ready while you were still talking. Without waiting for my turn to tell you why I was right. So I'm asking for one thing and you don't owe it to me. Whenever you're ready a week, a year, never I want to hear you. All of it. Everything I never let you say. Everything I talked over and corrected and brushed off. I will not interrupt you. I will not defend myself. And I promise you on your grandmother's grave there will be no but. Not one. You talk. I'll just listen. For as long as it takes. I found your grandmother's letters. She loved me so much she couldn't say it out loud. And she let me believe my whole life that she didn't. And she died before she ever found the courage to fix it. I am not going to do that to you. I am not going to be one more woman in this family who loved her child in total silence and let her find out too late. You were never a project to me, baby. You were the best thing I ever did. I just never once told you that the way you needed to hear it plain with nothing after it. So let me say it now, and let it be the only sentence on this whole page that stands by itself. I am glad you exist. That's all. Just glad. Your mama. I folded it up. And then I did something I can't fully explain. I took my mother's 20th letter, the last one she ever wrote the year before she died, and I put it in the envelope with mine. 2 letters 50 years apart from 2 women who couldn't say it out loud, going down to a 3rd woman in Atlanta who was fighting with everything she had not to become the 4th. I drove to the post office myself, and I mailed it. And then I waited, and I did not call. For the first time in my life, I let my child have the silence to decide. She called me 9 days later. It was a Tuesday night. I almost didn't recognize her number on the screen because it had been so long. My heart was going so hard I had to sit down before I answered. "Mama," her voice was small, careful. "I got your letter, and Grandma's." "I'm here," I said. And then, Lord, it was the hardest thing I closed my mouth. And I kept it closed. There was a long silence. I let it sit there. The old me would have rushed in to fill it to make it comfortable to manage it. I didn't. I just breathed and I waited and I let my daughter find her own way into the hardest conversation of both our lives. And then she started to talk. And once she started, 37 years came out. "I used to think something was wrong with me," she said, "when I was little, because no matter what I did, it was never the thing. I'd bring home a 98 and you'd ask about the 2 points. I'd clean my whole room and you'd find the one corner I missed. And I really thought, Mama, for years that there was something broken in me that I couldn't see. Because if I was doing everything right and it still wasn't enough, then the problem had to be me." Right. Every word was a knife, and I had earned every one of them. I gripped the edge of my chair and I said nothing. I let her keep going. "I made myself so good at everything," she said, and she was crying now. "Straight A Spelman, the firm, the awards. And you know what nobody ever understood? I wasn't doing it for me. I never enjoyed a single bit of it. I was doing it to finally be enough for you. And it never worked. There was always a next thing. And I'd watch other kids whose parents just liked them. Just enjoyed them. And I didn't know what that felt like. I still don't. You remember my 16th birthday?" she went on, and I felt the floor drop because I knew what was coming. All my friends were there, and I just wanted one night to be, I don't know, pretty, happy, 16. And you spent the whole party behind that camera telling me to stand up straight, fix my collar, stop slouching, do it again, in front of everybody. And I remember standing there thinking, even now, even tonight, there's still something wrong with me she has to fix. Her voice went thin. "I've never told anybody that. I smiled in every one of those pictures, Mama. You've got a whole album of me smiling, and I was dying inside every single frame." I had remembered that night for 20 years as one of my proudest. She had carried it for 20 years as the night she finally gave up hoping. The same night, the same house, 2 completely different stories, and I'd never once known hers. My whole body was screaming to say I did enjoy you, baby. I loved every minute to defend, to soften it, to fix it. That's the reflex. That's the disease. And I held it down. I held it down the way you hold a door against a storm. Because I finally understood that every time I'd opened my mouth to defend myself, I had taken something away from her. And tonight I was going to give her the one thing I'd never given her room. So all I said was, "Keep going, baby. I'm listening." I heard her breath catch. I don't think anybody had ever said that to her, and meant it. "And then I had Naomi," she said softer. "And Mama, I love her so much it scares me. And the first time she fell down and started crying, and I heard your voice come out of my mouth, 'Hush, crying never fixed a thing.' I went in the bathroom and I sat on the floor and I shook, because I swore I wouldn't. And there it was anyway, like it was just waiting in me. And I've spent 6 years in therapy trying to dig it out, and some days I think I'm winning, and some days I hear myself, and I want to disappear." She was sobbing now. "I stayed away from you because I was scared every time I got near you it'd get stronger. I wasn't trying to punish you. I was trying to keep it off her. I'm so tired, Mama. I'm so tired of fighting something I can't even see." And there it was, the whole truth of 4 generations finally spoken out loud by the bravest one of us. I sat in my dark kitchen 800 miles away, and I listened to my daughter cry, and I did not interrupt her, and I did not defend myself, and I did not say one single but. I just stayed on that line and let her be heard. for the first time in 37 years. "I'm still listening," I told her when she finally went quiet. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." And she cried some more, but it was a different kind of crying now. The kind that comes when somebody finally lets you set something down. Then she said the words that told me a door was opening just a crack after a lifetime shut. "Will you come down here, Mama? I think we need to do this face to face." "I'll be on the next plane," I said. I flew to Atlanta on a Thursday, 64 years old, with my mother's letters in my purse and my heart in my throat. Simone opened the door, and for a long moment neither of us said anything. We just looked at each other. And I mean, we looked the way I don't think we'd ever once done in 37 years. Not me checking her collar, not her bracing for a correction. Just two grown women, a mother and a daughter, standing in a doorway, finally seeing each other plain. She'd gotten Denise to take Naomi to the park. She wanted it to be just us. We sat down at her kitchen table. There's always a kitchen table in this family, isn't there? That's where all the truth gets told, and she made coffee, and her hands were shaking a little, and so were mine. "I don't really know how to do this," she said. "Neither do I, baby," I told her. "We come from a long line of women who never learned how, so let's just be bad at it together." And something in her face cracked just a little. The smallest smile. The first one she'd given me in a year. She talked for a long time. I'm not going to give you all of it, because some of it belongs only to her. But she told me things a daughter shouldn't have to carry, how she'd felt invisible inside her own accomplishments, how she'd learned to perform being okay so well that even she couldn't always find the real her underneath how lonely it is to be the child everybody calls so strong. And I listened. The whole time I listened. I didn't build a single defense. And when she finally finished, when she'd laid it all out on that table between us, she looked at me bracing, waiting. I knew that look. It was the look of a girl who has learned that whenever she finally says the true thing, the but is coming. The correction is coming. But you don't understand. But I did my best. But you had it good. And here is the moment. The hardest sentence I have ever said in my life. 4 generations of women had never managed to say it not once. Not my grandmother, not Eula, not me. I had spent 64 years with that, but welded to the back of my teeth. I looked my daughter in her eyes and I said, "You're right, and I'm sorry." And then I stopped. I want you to understand what that took. Because everything in me, every cell, every year of training was straining to add the next part. But I love you. But I tried. But my mother was worse. But. The but was right there. It's always right there. It's the family inheritance. And I did not say it. I let the sentence end. You're right. And I'm sorry. A period. A full stop. The first clean apology in the history of the Coleman women with nothing attached to it. No escape hatch, no defense, no bill. Just my daughter's pain and me owning it and laying it down. The kitchen went so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming. 3 seconds, maybe 4. But those were the longest, truest seconds of my whole life, because in that silence for once there was nothing crowding in behind my words. No now, no but. Just an apology sitting clean on the table between us with room to breathe. I had been afraid my whole life that if I ever said sorry without defending myself, I'd disappear. I didn't disappear. I just sat there 64 years old, finally honest, and it was the strongest I have ever felt. My Simone stared at me, and then her whole face came apart and she started to cry. Really cry, the deep kind, the kind that's been waiting 37 years for permission. And this time, nobody told her to hush. I got up out of my chair, and I came around that table, and I did the thing my mother never did for me, the thing I never did for my own child. I pulled her into my arms, and I held her while she cried. I held her like she was 6 years old, and the world had hurt her, and her grandma was right there. I didn't tell her to stop. I didn't tell her crying never fixed a thing. I just held on and I let her shake and I said, "I've got you, baby. Cry as long as you need. I'm not going anywhere." And she cried into my shoulder like something that had been frozen for decades was finally melting. But she wasn't done. Because there was one more thing, and it was the thing she was most ashamed of, and she said it into my shoulder so quiet, I almost missed it. "Mama, I have to tell you something, and I'm scared to." She pulled back just enough to look at me. "Last week, after our phone call, after everything," she swallowed hard. "Naomi spilled her juice and started fussing, and I was tired, and before I could even think hush, crying never fixed a thing. Same as always, same as you, same as Grandma." Tears running down. "I did all this. The therapy, the letters finally telling you the truth. And I still did it. And I sat there thinking, what's the point? I'm already her. It's already in me. Being close to you won't fix it. It'll just make it worse. She stopped. "I almost sent you the letter, the one in the drawer. I almost gave up completely, because I thought this thing is just unbreakable. I thought I was kidding myself." And there it was, the real twist, the one I had to come 800 miles to learn, because I had walked in there thinking that if I could just see the wound clearly enough, just understand it, just apologize for it, then it would be fixed. That awareness was the cure. And my daughter had just shown me it isn't. You can see it perfectly and still pass it on. You can spend 6 years in therapy and still hear the old voice come out of your mouth on a tired Tuesday. Knowing doesn't break the loop. So I took my mother's letters out of my purse and I put them on the table in front of my daughter, and I told her the only thing I'd figured out that was actually true. "Baby, your grandmother knew. Read these and you'll see she knew exactly what she was doing to me every year. And it broke her heart every year, and she still couldn't stop. Knowing didn't save her. And I knew the second I saw Naomi pat that doll I knew, and knowing didn't stop me from doing the same thing to you on the phone 5 minutes later." I took her hands. "Seeing it doesn't break it. You can't break it by being perfect, because none of us will ever be perfect. We're going to slip. You slipped last week. I'll slip next week. You'll catch yourself. I'll catch myself." "Then how?" she whispered. "How does it ever stop?" "Like this," I said. "Right here. This is how. It stops the first time a mother looks her child in the eye and says, 'You're right, and I'm sorry,' with no but on the end of it. And then says it again the next time she slips. And again. Out loud. Together. That's the whole secret, baby. It's not that we never fall back into it. It's that from now on, when we do, we name it and we say sorry and we don't let it go quiet. The loop doesn't live in the slipping. It lives in the silence. 80 years of women too proud and too scared to say I'm sorry out loud. That's the chain. And we just broke it. You and me. At this table. Just now." She looked down at her grandmother's letters. This woman she barely remembered, who had loved her mother in total silence and died with the words still locked in a tin box. And she understood. It was never that we didn't love each other. Every single one of us loved like our hearts were on fire. The tragedy was only this: not one of us in 80 years had ever found the road to get that love out of our chests and into the open air where the children could feel it. Until now. Until 2 of us finally decided to build that road together out loud, sorry by sorry on purpose, for as long as it took. "Okay," Simone said, wiping her face, half laughing, half crying. "Okay, together." And for the first time in 4 generations, 2 Coleman women said I love you to each other out loud in the daylight, with nothing after it. I want to be honest with you, because this story would be a lie if I tied it up with a bow. Not everything got fixed at that kitchen table. We didn't hug it out and become a perfect mother and daughter. That's not how real life works, and anybody who tells you different is selling something. Simone and I are still awkward with each other sometimes. I still catch the old words climbing up my throat. You look tired. Are you eating that? Haircut's a little, and I have to stop and swallow them. She still gets quiet sometimes when I call, still has to remind herself she doesn't have to perform for me. 64 years of habit doesn't disappear because you had one good cry in Atlanta. But here is what changed. And it changed everything. Now when one of us slips, we say so. Out loud. That's the whole thing. I'll catch myself starting in on a correction and I'll stop and say, "There I go, I'm sorry, baby, start that over." And she'll laugh or she'll tear up and she'll say, "I caught it too, Mama." We don't let it go silent anymore. We don't pretend it didn't happen. We name it every single time and we say sorry and we keep going. The loop didn't disappear. We just stopped feeding it in the dark. We talk now, really talk twice a week, sometimes more. She tells me real things. The hard day at the firm, the fight with Denise, the things she's scared of. She lets me see her unfinished, unpolished, unperfect, and I have learned to just love what I see without reaching for the camera to fix her collar. Some nights she calls just to talk for no reason, nothing she needs. My mother never got that from me. I never got it from mine. And now at 64, I have it. It came late, but it came. I'll tell you a small thing that means more to me than I can say. A few weeks after Atlanta, Simone mailed me something. No occasion, just a padded envelope. Inside was a framed copy of Naomi's drawing, the grandmother and the little girl holding hands under that great big yellow sun, and a note in my daughter's handwriting that said, "For your wall, so you never forget you're the one who broke it. Love, Simone." No but, no correction, just love said plain in the daylight. I hung it in my kitchen right over the table where I read my mother's letters. Some mornings I stand there with my coffee and I look at it 3 generations of women all in one little crayon picture, and I think about my mother ironing my school dress at 5 o'clock in the dark, saying I love you the only way she knew how. I understand her now. I forgive her completely. And I like to think that wherever she is, she can finally see that the road she spent her whole life unable to cross, somebody crossed it. Her granddaughter and I built the bridge she couldn't. And her great-great-granddaughter is going to grow up walking across it like it was always there. The loop didn't disappear. We just stopped feeding it in the dark and started building something else in the light. It happened the next time I came to visit that summer. We were all out in the backyard, me, Simone, Denise, and Naomi running around looking for Mr. Buttons, the spider. And Naomi, the way 6-year-olds do, took a corner too fast and went down hard on the concrete patio. The same patio. Skinned both knees. And the cry came up out of her big and broken the way it does. And I felt it. I felt all 3 of us feel it. That old reflex rising up in every grown woman in that yard at the same time, hush crying never fixed a thing, 80 years of it loaded and ready, sitting right there on all our tongues. But this time I was closer. This time I got there first. I got down on the ground, these old knees on the concrete, so I was level with her eye to eye, and I pulled that crying baby into my lap and I said the words that have never once been spoken in 4 generations of this family. The words my mother never said to me. The words I never said to Simone. I held my granddaughter and I said, "Cry, baby. Go on and cry. It's okay. It hurts, and you're allowed. Grandma's right here, and I've got you, and you don't have to stop till you're ready." And I felt it the second I said it how the whole yard went still. Denise stopped where she stood. Simone's hand came up to her mouth. Because every grown woman out there knew in her bones that something was happening that had never happened before. 80 years bending in a different direction right there in the afternoon sun over a pair of skinned knees and a 6-year-old who had no idea she was a miracle. And Naomi cried, hard, into my chest just like that first night. And I didn't rush her, and nobody told her to hush, and after a while the crying ran itself out the way crying is supposed to, and she wiped her nose on my shoulder and said, "Can I have a Band-Aid with the dogs on it?" and went running back off into the yard like the whole thing never happened. I looked up from the ground, and Simone was standing there with her hand over her mouth crying too. because she'd just watched her daughter fall down and get held. Just held. No correction, no hush, no bill. She'd just watched her little girl learn in real time that in this family now, you are allowed to fall apart in somebody's arms. That baby will grow up with a different sentence in her body than the one I grew up with. A different reflex. A different inheritance. We did that. On a concrete patio in Atlanta. 3 women on purpose broke an 80-year-old chain, and the only one who'll never know it happened is the one we broke it for. That's the part that gets me when I'm lying awake at night. Naomi will never remember the day the loop broke. She won't remember any of this. The letters, the drawer, the kitchen tables, the years her mother and I lost and found again. She'll just grow up thinking that crying in somebody's arms is a normal, safe, ordinary thing. She'll grow up thinking that's just how love works, and that is the whole point. That's what all of it was for. Not so I could feel better. Not so I could be forgiven. So that one little girl could grow up never knowing the wound at all. So that when she has a daughter of her own someday, the only thing in her body to pass down is the holding. My mother loved me in total silence and died with the words locked in a tin box. I almost did the exact same thing, but almost is the most important word I know now. I kept that tin box. Eula's letters are in it still, and I added Naomi's drawing, and one day when she's old enough to understand, I'm going to sit my granddaughter down and give it to her. And I'm going to tell her the whole story. About her great-great-grandmother in a store in Mississippi learning to lock her face so she'd survive. About all the women who loved her before she was ever born in a language nobody could hear. I'm not going to let it be a secret. Secrets are how the silence wins. She's going to know exactly where she came from and exactly what we broke so she wouldn't have to carry it. That tin box used to hold 80 years of words that never got said. Now it's going to hold the proof that we finally said them. I couldn't heal my own childhood, but I healed the one coming after me. A few last words from me to you. If you've made it this far, I suspect it's because some piece of this is yours too. Maybe you heard your mother in your own voice this week. Maybe there's a child of yours holding you at arm's length and you never understood why. Maybe you're the one in your family who can feel the old wound moving and you don't know how to make it stop. So let me tell you the one thing I know now that I'd have given anything to know at 30. The wound is not that we don't love each other. In my family, the love was never the problem. It was huge. It was fierce. It ran through every one of us like a river. The wound is the silence. It's love that never learned the road out of the chest and into the open. Generation after generation of women loving like their hearts were on fire and never once saying it plain until the children grew up sure they were never loved at all. You don't break that by being perfect. You'll slip. I still slip. You break it the first time you look someone in the eye and say you're right, and I'm sorry with no but on the end. And then you say it again the next time, out loud, on purpose. You refuse to let the love go quiet ever again. It is never ever too late to be the one who breaks it. Not at 40, not at 60, not at 64 on your knees on a concrete patio holding a crying baby and finally getting it right. If you're going to be the one who ends the loop in your family type, I'll be the one. I read every single comment, and I'll be praying for every one of you who does.